Hi, Chanel.
Hello, Leslie.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thanks for inviting me on. It's an honor because, as I was just saying to you before we started recording, I really admire what you've been doing and just the way that you've presented what's happening to you in a calm and kind of non-polarizing way, I would say. So I'm happy to, just chat finally.
Thanks. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think that's been very important to me because I think that there's that temptation to become very polarized as we've kind of discussed through emails that we've shared. And so you reached out to me after the Benjamin Boyce interview because you had spoken with him as well. And then you saw my interview and you offered to make a written piece based on my video about social justice. And that was how we connected.
Yeah, I saw that video and I was like, man, I just want like hundreds of thousands of people to see this. And I'm like, maybe some people prefer to read instead of watching a video. So I'm like, I'll just do what I can because I just, the way that you presented like the issue in that video really made it clear that you're looking to bring people together, right? Not like to win or not to be some kind of hero, but just to actually get to a place where people are understanding what's going on and potentially seeing things from your point of view, right? You've really been treated horrendously by this university. It's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. I think when I first saw that their position statement calling me a white supremacist, I was like, it's kind of unbelievable, but at the same time, it sort of demonstrated all of my points about the bias and the strange way of thinking that they're trying to generate. Because if you've listened to anything that I've said and you can take from that white supremacy, it defies logic unless you are going by this bizarre ideology which changes the meaning of language basically. But yeah,
that's the only way they've managed to get this far, right? It's just these subtle little shifts, and then they get people to agree to statements and they don't really know what they're agreeing to. And then, 2 years later, it shifts again and it shifts again. And now we're here. So,
yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the boiling the frog. You start off a little bit and get people to agree. Before you know it, you've kind of gotten sucked in.
Yeah, like before you know it, you're like that person in man, I don't know what country it was, but somebody recently, I don't know if you heard about this, but she said men are men and can't be lesbians or something like that. And now she's facing criminal charges for that.
I saw a headline. I cannot remember either where she is. Maybe it was the
maybe
UK.
Norway, I think.
Oh,
or something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did
it's
see
like
that.
that's where we're gonna end up, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I know it's a really strange. It's happened so quickly. It feels. But your written version of that piece was really awesome, and I thought it was so nice that you took the time to do that. And what you did was you kind of cleaned it up, because when somebody's just talking sort of off the cuff, it doesn't necessarily translate to a perfect. You can't just transcribe that and have it sound right, because people cut themselves off and say, and I do that all the time. So the way you did it, you gave it a flow and a structure, and it was awesome. And so I put that on my Substack. So if anybody hasn't had a chance to see that already, it's out there. And that was written by you.
It was fun to do.
Yeah. Thank you for doing it. Yeah. And so I know a little bit about your experience, but only a little bit. So I'd love to hear more. And up till now, the people that I've spoken with on this channel have been either counselors or counseling trainees. And so it's been kind of within that framework of the counseling, I guess, education setting. And your setting is slightly different, but related, because it's education. So education at large. So you were a high school teacher, right? And you, as far as I understand it, started out with some comments on a Facebook page, but then your story kind of snowballs from there. So I'd love to just, if you can Walk me into that. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'll give you the rundown. So basically what happened is in February 2021, I put a comment in a private Facebook group saying that we shouldn't indoctrinate kids with critical race theory. That was the gist of it. It was basically someone was asking for Black Lives Matter resources for Black History Month. And I mean, that's just presenting that organization to begin with. Like I knew how it was going to be presented, and I knew it was going to be sort of indoctrination. So I said we shouldn't be doing that. You know, we should be presenting all sides. And then I said something about how in the UK, because at that point I think it was around that time that MP Kemi Badenoch did a really, really good speech saying like our government stands against CRT. If teachers are teaching this as if it's accepted fact, like they're breaking the law and things like that. So I just wanted to share that with people to say like, look, here we're like, you know, we're teaching this as if it's normal. And in the UK, it's actually a crime. So like, maybe we should think about what we're doing. Like, is it right? Is it not right? So I was just presenting this other perspective. And within like,
and you're
10
in
minutes,
Canada, right? Sorry, I should have said that in the beginning. You're in Ontario?
Oh yeah, woke land of the woke.
Oh, okay.
Can't get more woke.
Oh gosh.
So, well, actually, I say that, but then I see the stuff at Antioch. I'm like, okay, we're pretty much on the same page.
Yeah, well, I live outside of Seattle, so you know, I kind of
So within 10 minutes, I have, you know, dozens of people coming at me. Are you really a teacher? Like, I can't believe you're saying to teach kindness and not power and racism and things like this. So I just kind of froze at that time. I took a couple screenshots. I left the group and I was like, hopefully someone doesn't report me. And then Monday comes around, and as I go to leave, I get a letter from my principal, and it's saying I'm under investigation. No details or anything. Yeah.
So
I'm like, okay.
You made some comments about like let's not discriminate or whatever, something kind of innocuous in this group. You got a pile on right away. You left the group, and then you're being investigated. So somebody must have reported it to this principal as some kind of hate speech or something.
Yeah, as a harmful, you know, harmful words or whatever, hurting the marginalized and all that.
Wow.
So I got like a direct message from one of them too, and saying, you know, you're hurting people, and I can't believe blah blah blah. It's just really like hateful stuff, you know, in the name of inclusion. And so then, you know, I'm kind of left in the dark, and I have to go talk to my union and see what the heck is going on, and who made the complaint, what did I do. And finally they tell me that it was, you know, to do with this thing. So what happens after that? Well, about a month later, so this started the investigation, like I got one chance to talk to the board and kind of explain my side. I was feeling pretty good about it, honestly, because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I'm like, look, all I'm saying is we should be talking about both sides. Like we shouldn't be indoctrinating. And a month later, they suspended me for a week without pay. Like a really kind of humiliating experience, especially because I was in class. They pulled me out of class, brought someone else in, had me on a Zoom, told me I couldn't set foot on school property for the whole week, like as if I'm some kind of criminal, and I wouldn't get paid. Yeah.
So that's really humiliating, and it's defamatory and hurts your reputation and just makes you look like this dangerous, you know, I don't know. You're kind of it's really casting that very strong light on you as if you've done something wrong.
But then at the same time, it's all undercover, right? Like nobody knows what's going on. So that's it's kind of, it's weird. Like at that time, I wasn't talking to people about it because it's kind of a taboo thing, and I didn't know yet like what was going to happen. And you know, it was a personal battle more than anything, until later on when I decided like, okay, this isn't okay. Like I can't be quiet about it. But yeah, like that is still ongoing, actually, that whole battle, because I decided to appeal it. And it took about 2 years, or sorry, it's going to take about 2 years to actually have the appeal hearing, which
Oh,
is set
wow.
for May of this year.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow, it really drags on.
yeah, and that's okay. So that's just the first investigation
Okay.
by my school board. The other one, just quickly, it's the Ontario College of Teachers. So my regulatory body there, the licensing body, that decided to start investigating me last March, I believe. So right away when I got that letter, and it was about the same comment I had made in the group, I was like, okay, no, this isn't okay. So I put it on Twitter, and like within a month, I had lawyers, I had, you know, I had people supporting me and everything, and I've been public since then.
Yeah, you've developed a pretty good Twitter following at this point, it looks like.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I try to just stay kind of balanced and just keep on repeating the same things. You know, I want equality for all. I don't want special privileges for one group over another. I don't think that political ideologies belong in the classroom. And lately, what I've been trying to do is just expose a little bit of what's going on. And it's not even like I'm commenting on it. I'm just saying, like, look, this happened in this class. Here's what this teacher's saying. And, you know, people can make their own opinions about it.
Yeah, just kind of let the evidence speak for itself.
Yeah, like you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's best to let people make up their own mind, because it does speak for itself when you put the information out there. So I like that approach a lot. And what's this been like for you? Because I can only imagine at that beginning point when you're being investigated and you're being treated like you've done something wrong, you're being yanked out of class and put on these calls. That must have been a lot of turmoil for you. And what was going on inside at that time?
Yeah, it wasn't that easy. I guess it was stressful at the beginning, especially when I didn't know if I was going to get that letter or not, when I didn't know what was going to happen. But I have to say, though, that to get to that place where I was willing to put that comment in the group, like I wasn't doing so blindly, right? Like I knew that there was a possibility of people freaking out. Just, you know, I had been paying attention to what was happening for probably almost a year at that point. Like before that, I was really, really like ignorant about what was happening. I had no idea. Like I was just floating along. It was nice. It was blissful ignorance, but you know. So yeah, like I knew there was a risk and everything, but I knew also that the alternative to taking that risk is worth to me. So I just kind of weighed the risk and just went for it.
So it sounds like maybe that the turmoil was before you came out with that statement, when you were and when you're kind of coming out of that blissful ignorance you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess the turmoil.
Yeah, if there is, I don't want
to.
Yeah.
Like it would have been more like that moment where I had to accept, like, okay, I might be screwing over my career. You know, like that kind of moment. But I got over it pretty quickly, just because, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it, right? I'm that kind of person. Like the comment was already made, the complaint was already made. Like, what am I gonna do, right? Like, I'm not gonna cower away. That's not who I am. So it's just like, well, we'll see what happens, you know?
Yeah, well, that's great that you had the confidence to do that when you did. And when you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it helps that my family's supportive. You know, my family understands, and you know, they're not telling me, oh my God, as if you screwed up your career. They're saying, well, you know what, we're speaking out for what's right. So that helps.
That is good. It's good to have the supportive people around you, so you can kind of do like a reality check and say, am I seeing this right? Or are you seeing what I'm seeing? So when you're describing that state of blissful ignorance prior, when you said you're just kind of floating along and just going along with what you're hearing in the culture, what was that like, and what was the process of realizing? When did you realize, hey, I don't know if I agree with what I'm hearing?
So I would say it was in the summer of 2020 when everything kind of blew up, right? Um, I don't know exactly what was the thing, but I think there was a few events that happened. One of them that kind of sticks out to me is I had a professor at my university. He supervised my thesis and everything. I took a few courses with him and I really liked him. And he made a comment on Twitter and, you know, got mobbed.
Okay.
His comment, he was a biology professor, and his comment was something like, you know, it's so stupid to be racist. We've all just evolved from like single-celled organisms. Like, you know, let's not do this. And then he hashtagged all lives matter, which was his crime.
Yeah, because that was inflammatory at the time, or still probably. Yeah.
Still probably, yeah.
Yeah. And so he got mobbed.
Freaked out on him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. So I started defending him because you know, he hadn't done anything wrong and I knew his intention was not bad. And, you know, and for that, I lost like 3 or 4 Facebook friends, like in one day. And I just started to feel like, okay, like if these people are so inclusive and stuff, why are they behaving like this? Like, why don't they have any empathy, or like, why aren't they able to just be like decent? So I started to, I guess, just allow myself to ask questions more. And from there, well, that summer I discovered podcasts. I guess COVID had something to do with that. But so I was listening to podcasts a lot, and just it just was blowing my mind, you know, for that period of time, because I was just discovering these amazing people, like on Joe Rogan, just random people, not even all about politics, but like, oh, he's talking to an astronaut this day, and then like a physicist the next day, and whoever. And I got really into that, and it really just helped me see the world in a different way. And I guess from there it just kind of snowballed. Then I started linking stuff and seeing things at school that were happening, and I knew that it was part of this ideology, and I couldn't really tolerate that anymore. So yeah.
So it was like,
is that similar to what happened with you? Because like, I guess you kind of have a similar story, but it must be more recent, right? Because
kind of, it is similar in some ways. So it sounds like for you, it was like you had these jarring moments where you were seeing people argue in ways that didn't make sense and wasn't rational given what was being said. Like this professor of yours who had good intentions and tried to say something that was kind and loving and inclusive, and he got this pile on that wasn't it wasn't proportionate at all to what he said. It was unreasonable levels of ire directed at him. And then after that, you started to sort of expand your sphere of influence to include lots of different voices and stories. And it just opened your mind a little bit to other ways of seeing things. And for me, if that's correct, if that's a good summary. Yeah. For me, I was a student when I was a college student. It was back in the 2000s, the early to mid 2000s, and then I went to law school in 2009 and 2010. I ended up leaving law school, and then I took a break, and I have 4 children. I had already had 2. I was a mother of 2, and then I had 2 more children during that intervening time, and I just worked as doing medical office work. I worked in a naturopathic clinic for a while. Anyway, so my story was I kind of just got out of academia, and I was just in sort of the real world, if you will, real world. And I just was being a mom and having my friends and being around my family. And I wasn't really exposed to these cultural shifts in thinking so much. And so when I came back to school, I'd heard some whispers of it, and I'd seen some things on Facebook also. I was still on Facebook at the time, and there had been this sort of mobbing of somebody who said something offensive in the social justice sense that I'd witnessed in a local moms group. And it was really strange to me. And there was, a lot of racial slurs about white people. And I thought this was really, it was kind of it was new to me. I didn't understand where this was coming from. It was the first time I'd been exposed to these words like white privilege and check your privilege, and this idea that one of the people getting mobbed was being mobbed because she was mixed race, which is still part white privilege. And so I was seeing these words be thrown around and I didn't know really where it was coming from. And so when I got to school, when I started back to graduate school in 2019, I was kind of primed with some awareness of these things, but my initial awareness of them had already been kind of jarring to where it wasn't, that first time I saw it was already with a dose of, this doesn't make rational sense that we're doing this.
Okay. So you never had like, you'd never felt enticing to you in any way? You never like almost jumped on or anything?
Not really. What I like when I started that program, and I've talked a little bit about the multicultural perspectives course that I took, which was really just a DEI training disguised as a core applied psychology course. That during that, I was trying to make it make sense. I was trying to go along with it because I think the tenets of what they're trying to do with the social justice ideology is they're trying to answer real problems and real questions with a solution that to me, it doesn't seem like the right solution. It seems like a very polarizing sort of thing. It's like a retributive, things have been going wrong in this way, so let's tip the scale really far this way in order to balance things out and make things right. And my stance was, I can see that we've had systemic problems. I mean, I can see this, and we have historical issues that privilege some groups over some other groups. And so we do have challenges that are very real and deserve real attention, and that we should be discussing. We should be talking about these things, especially in a sociological sense. And when we're talking about people's backgrounds and ways to be aware of challenges that people may have faced, etc. But the social justice answer is to go into this like really stereotyped and simplistic and reductionist narrative that doesn't make any sense to me, and that never has made any sense to me. So I was trying to have this like larger conversation about, hey, maybe we can talk about these in a more nuanced way and really get into how these factors affect real people and how they could potentially factor into people's lives, or maybe not so much in other cases, because the reality of the individual experience is so complex that we can't answer it with, check these boxes for your demographics and this tells you what kind of a person you are. So
yeah, you run into it so innocently, like just thinking, well, like they're going to be wanting the truth just like I do, right? Because we kind of assume that that's what people want, but it's actually like it's a new religion. They're not searching for truth, they're searching for conformity, right?
Yeah.
So it's a whole other world, and I think so many people get bulldozed because of that nice assumption that they have that other people are kind of looking for the same thing. Like I've seen just a lot of people who come to me and they're like, yeah, I agree with you, but I tried to say this and then they said this, and and it's like, yeah, but you need to know that that's what they're going to do. Like you need to like go into these conversations prepared, like this is what they're going to do. They're going to either call you names, they're going to recite some statistic that's going to make you feel like shit, and if you're not ready with some other statistic that you can present to them or something else that you can say, like you're just going to be there looking like an idiot, right? So then you're going to not do it again, and it's like
it's very much a gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so sad to see though, because all these, like, they're really genuine people, right? And they don't know the ins and outs of the ideology. Like they haven't really gone into all the theories and like read it, like James Lindsay and all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
yes, I think that's very well put, and I think that's the way that I see it, is that there's a core of goodwill in what brings people to this way of thinking. I'm not saying that there's a core of goodwill in the indoctrination and the ideology necessarily, but what it purports to try to solve is something that genuinely compassionate people would care about. And so you find a lot of really compassionate people who think that they're doing the right thing by speaking in this way and supporting these ideas. And I think that it's, I guess I think that it's easy to demonize people, but many people have their own story of how they came to see it differently, came to see it from a more nuanced perspective. Like what you've said, I've heard that from several people, very similar. I was kind of going along with it. I was saying the things and doing the things and putting up the profile picture or whatever it was to signal agreement with this way of thinking. And then some things started to happen where I saw contradiction and I saw a lack of reasonableness, and I found myself arguing on the other side and getting mobbed, and I realized. And so I think that that's it. It's important to remember that it's not about my enemy. The people who are social justice adherents are not necessarily the enemy. They're just people who see things a little bit differently and maybe haven't come around. Yeah, or a lot differently. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, you're right though. Like the thing that we all have to remember, I think, because a lot of people on Twitter, like I see all kinds, right? Like I really admire those who are going to stick to the middle, and they really make an effort to hear the other person out and to kind of not necessarily find middle ground, but at least not give them a reason to think that they're evil, like just stating plain facts or whatever. And I really like that. I try to be like that most times too, but there are some people who will like come in and label the other side and stuff. And to me, it's like it's just not going to help. Like, what are we aiming at here? Like, do we want a civil war? Do we want, what are we aiming at? Because if we're looking at bringing people together and kind of decreasing that polarization, what we have to do is, in some way or another, we need to try to just allow the other side to, or I shouldn't use that language, I guess, but it's
hard not to. I know it is hard.
Like we have to allow them to like reflect on some stuff and just to see our writing and wonder like, oh, what's so bad about that anyway? Like, am I missing something? And it'll take time, but.
Yeah, and when you say like not necessarily common ground, like or middle ground, that's a good. I liked the way you put that, because there really isn't. It's really hard to find what that middle ground would be with somebody who's got such an intolerant and dogmatic framework for seeing the world. There's not really a way to compromise with that, because the way that the ideology teaches you to think, it's an all or nothing ideology. It's you're with us or you're against us. You can't even argue gently against this and push back gently, or else you are demonized. You are a white supremacist. You are transphobic, or whatever it is. So there, you're right. It's hard to do that. But I do think that as we keep having these kind of conversations, and like, what's the moment that jars somebody else? When's that going to be? What's the tipping point for another person to read an argument and have a thought that sparks some questioning in their minds? And that could still happen. I think that could happen for any of us at any point. And sometimes when I'm thinking about this and talking about it, I feel like it sounds a little bit arrogant to say, like, I've resisted the phrase waking up. Like, it's so easy to say, like, I woke up to realize that this was indoctrination or whatever, but doesn't that sound so condescending to the sleepers,
I mean, yeah,
yet,
yeah,
go ahead.
I guess, I don't know, like it just is what it is though, right? Like at a certain point, like you are sleeping if you think that the world is this narrow thing of like composed of oppressors and the oppressed, and you have no gratitude whatsoever for your way of life in the West, and you're willing to just topple down all of our systems because they're not absolutely perfect. And in you know, trying to pursue that, you're going to destroy everything in front of you. Like that is a less than ideal way of viewing the world.
Yes,
right? Like,
yes, it is. And that right there is why these conversations are so great, because I think that for people who really want to be intentional and consider their own perspective and weigh it out in a respectful way, we constantly check ourselves, and we can check ourselves by talking with other people and having a conversation and saying, am I seeing this right? And yeah. So
that's been the most beautiful part of this, like just coming out and being open. Like I don't really filter much at all anymore. I used to more in the beginning. I was like, oh, maybe I won't touch this subject, but I'll just talk about this, or but I just don't care anymore. I'm like, you know what? Like every single person has a responsibility to speak up. And what's been beautiful about it is being able to disagree with people again. Like I absolutely love that. Now I'm like, please tell me where I'm wrong. Like, let's argue a little bit.
Yeah, I love it. Respectful disagreement without it being a black and white issue, without it being like you're all right or you're all wrong.
Exactly. You're a bad person because you know,
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you in terms of, are you able to teach at all, or what does that look like? What does your career look like right now?
Well, I'm kind of in a weird place because technically my license is okay right now. But like I've tried to apply to do some supply teaching and stuff, and I won't, like, they're not calling me back. Even though I know they're very like desperate for teachers, or so I've heard. So I'm somewhat canceled, I guess. I do have a little side job that I've been doing just for the meantime. And yeah.
Wow, it's such a shame to have somebody like you not able to work with young people. Your openness to discussion, and your lack of indoctrination and lack of interest in indoctrinating, that's exactly the kind of people that we'd want to be teaching.
Oh, thank you. Like this whole thing has, honestly, it makes me want to be in a classroom so much more.
Really?
Like, like some people think that it kind of has pushed me away, and I don't want to have anything to do with the classroom. It's like, it's the total opposite. Like I'm a totally new person. I feel like I'd be a completely different teacher than I was back in, 2019 when I was running the Pride group at the school.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah.
So I just feel like I could come in and actually really push kids to think, and not infuse, not that I was ever wanting to push my own beliefs, at least not intentionally. Maybe I did a little bit because I was a little kind of buying the whole ideology just a tad. But now I really could make an effort to push the other way and push for all different viewpoints, right? So it's too bad.
It sounds like you've gained a lot of confidence and self-assuredness through this process of learning to speak up. I don't know if it's learning. So. Is it learning to speak up? That almost sounds like you didn't know how before, but just through getting up the gumption to come out with this.
Yeah, like it was more of a like jump into the ocean and see if you can swim type of thing. Like I feel like, it wasn't one of those gradual, like, okay, well, I'll say a little bit of something here and a little bit of something there. It was like, all right,
it was like boom, jump. Yeah. Were you always like that as a young person? Did you always have like the confidence to speak up when something didn't seem right to you?
Oh my God, yes.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like to a fault. Like I have a sense of like not to be like, it can be a good or bad thing. I get into conflicts probably more than I'd want to because, or as a teenager or whatever, more than I'd want to because I felt the need to say stuff when it was needed, or when I thought it was needed. But yeah, I definitely think it's part of my personality that I just feel the need to say what's on my mind. I guess.
Yeah, that's something that really fascinates me, is what the personal differences that make someone more likely to speak up when they're feeling like something isn't right versus go along and get along.
Yeah, I've wondered about that so much too. Like, I really want some kind of big study to come out soon. Like, is anyone working on this? Because
I know.
that would be
Well,
good.
we've had lots of conformity experiments going on over the last couple of years. We could certainly glean something from that, I'm sure. What kind of people do X, Y, Z?
Yeah, like, are you more disagreeable, or?
I've gotten more disagreeable as I've gotten older, but I tend to be pretty agreeable overall. Yeah, I know. You would think, are you a little bit more disagreeable?
I don't know. Like,
You don't
I really
seem
feel
like I would pigeonhole you there at all.
No, that's the thing. I don't even think I am disagreeable. I'm just okay, like, it's like Jordan Peterson says, it's not that I'm disagreeable. I don't like conflict necessarily. It's just that I think it's better to have the conflict and resolve it than to not have the conflict and then to have whatever other issues going to arise from not having conflict. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like a calculated decision more than anything.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like I don't like dishonesty, and I really value direct communication, and I really value connection, and I don't feel like you can connect when there's dishonesty, and so I don't want to say things or put my name on things that I don't really feel are truthful. And so when it comes to being told that I have to regurgitate something that I feel is not true, I'm kind of going to I'm not going to be able to do that. And so, yeah, and I don't know if that's necessarily agreeable or disagreeable. It's a kind of a different factor, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Like, maybe it's more like inability to be inauthentic. Like, it's
yeah,
you know,
something like that. Yeah.
some kind of, yeah.
And it's not to say that I haven't been at times, but it's something that I really try not to do. I'm not perfect with that, but I really strive towards that. And yeah, that's kind of where it was for me with this program. I could go along to a great extent when I could massage it to be truthful to me. But when it comes to directly compelling my speech and making me sign a pledge that I do not agree with, I won't do that.
Have you had support in your circle there, like people in your life?
My personal circle of friends and family, yes, very much so, and that's been wonderful. And then as far as like through the school, I don't really have any connections with people at Antioch. At the time that I made the decision to put that video out, I was just taking online courses, and I didn't have a cohort or any kind of connection there. CTA is a wonderful resource, Critical Therapy Antidote. And so that's a professional network of concerned psychologists, counselors, and therapy professionals who have been trying to push back against the takeover of social justice ideology in the therapy field. And so that's been a wonderful resource for support. They are wonderful. And
I haven't heard about them. Is this like is it an anonymous thing, or do you know the names of the people running it?
Oh yeah, it's a big network. And so the founder's name is Val Thomas, and she's fantastic. She's in the UK based psychologist or counselor. And it's all around the world. We have members all around the world. And I found CTA early in my school career, in my graduate career, when I started to bump up against some things that didn't make sense in the program. And I was concerned about it. And I was wondering, what is this? And I started looking, and I ended up finding an article that she had written. And as soon as I saw that this was a group that existed, I was like, yes, I need to know these people. And so I have found a lot of support there.
And they're not afraid to get canceled? Like, I guess the ones who are actually practicing don't put their name?
So they do have a member directory, but I think it's internal. There are articles written by different members that you can find on the website. Some do use pseudonyms. and some are out with their names. And so it varies. I think people have to make that calculation for themselves just based on what their position is and what they're, what do they stand to lose for speaking out. I understand that it takes, it's a calculated decision for each person.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It does get a bit frustrating though, because it's like, atrocities have occurred throughout human history, and the only reason they have occurred is that individuals have been cowards. They put themselves first, right? They've thought, oh, okay, well, I'll save myself in the short term, and hopefully other people will figure it out. And often it doesn't go that way, right? So I'm just at the point now where I'm like, you know what? Like, nobody's asking you to go to war here. We're not telling you to put on a suit and you might get blown up. Like, we're saying literally just speak up. And if you have to change jobs, then like, that's a small price to pay to avoid, like, I mean, I don't want to be like, I understand that there's circumstances, if you're a single parent and you've got 4 kids, like, what are you going to do, right? But we're at that point now where it's like, where do we want this to go? Like, people need to just speak up.
I agree with you 100%. I think that's absolutely, we need everybody to the degree that you're seeing this, have conversations about it and not go along with things that don't feel right. And at the same time, I just as much as I agree fully with that, the individualist in me recognizes that I can't tell another person what I think that they should do without walking a mile in their shoes. And, it's just, it's sort of, that's the rub, is like, there's always that battle between individualism and collectivism. And I just stop short of judging another person for where they are in their own decision-making. At the same, and so I'm like holding both, what you're saying there. I agree with you completely. I do think that's what is needed in order to get past this and prevent what looks like a cultural revolution happening. And it's very scary to me, and I take it very seriously. I do think we all need to be able to find the place to speak. And then I also know it's a process for each person deciding when is it my time.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think there's a difference between, talking to someone one-on-one and being like, you need to speak up because I can't decide whether that person, can or can't or whatever, should or shouldn't. But I think just in general, the message is, if you can, please do, because like, the more people we have, like, this is going to be like the number of radicals with this ideology aren't that high. I don't think it is anyway. There's just a lot of people going along with it, but
that's what I hope as well, and that's what I think is probably the case. But I'd like to see us reach a tipping point where we can get back to a conversation that's more nuanced, and that this stuff isn't sweeping our schools, our universities, our the DEI trainings are throughout the government and throughout a lot of corporate fields. And I'd love to get this. I'd love
back in check.
Yeah.
I was just posting on Twitter today, like, there's these consulting people that I've been looking into, and I found like 2 today. They're charging some crazy amount. Like, one guy who charges $1,200 or $1,500 to $4,000 for like one workshop at school. And so this is in the Toronto area. He just, you book him for an hour or 2, pay him a couple grand to go and tell the kids and or teachers that, we live in an oppressive hellhole and all this stuff. Like, it's such a good grift for the people who got into it. They're making, like, this guy must be making millions.
Yeah, it is. That's incredible. And people are doing it. They're buying it. Well, I think this has been such an interesting conversation, and I've really enjoyed following you and hearing your perspective on this stuff. I love the way that you are just out there and saying what you think and just speaking very reasonably. And I hope you get back into teaching at some point, because I think your students will benefit greatly from having a teacher like you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And back at you, I hope that you can get into therapy. I know you're doing life coaching, right?
Coaching, yeah.
But like, it would be nice for you eventually to you know, do what you set out to do and get that one-on-one, like be that actual good therapist that people need, you know, and they need answers. So yeah, the feeling is very mutual, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Are there any final thoughts you have, or recommendations, or links that you want to direct people to?
No, not really. I mean, if you want to find me on Twitter, it's Chanel Pfahl, which is hard to spell, but I'm sure you can type it there somewhere.
I will. I sure will. I'll include it. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for speaking with me.
Thanks, Leslie.